So Carola and I, we met maybe a month and a half ago, and she showed me this hack to be able to optimize my research process, and I actually use it all the time, and I love it, so thank you very much. And she's about to teach it to you guys. She works at TaskRabbit as a product designer, and she puts 1,000% into everything that she does. You can just tell. So I wanted to say thank you, Carola, for being here. Here's the clicker, and kick butt. Let's go.
Thank you. Right. Thank you for being here. Today we're going to talk about optimizing user research and how we do it at TaskRabbit. So before going into that, a little bit about me. My name is Carola, and don't bother, but my last name is too long. And I'm a product designer at TaskRabbit, where I've been for a little longer than 1 year. And I don't know if everyone is familiar with TaskRabbit, but TaskRabbit is a marketplace where anyone that needs help can find someone with the right skills to provide that help. So the way I do product design at TaskRabbit, for every project that I lead, I do the whole design process. So from research, which we're going to talk about today, down to design QA and pairing with the engineers. And that's pretty much what everyone on the design team does. We're a very, very small team. So every product designer needs to know the whole stack. So that's how research really fits into our process. So when it's project-related research, generally it's done by the designer that leads the project. While when it's foundational research, we hand it over to the UX researcher. So you'll see we're a very small team. So since we want to talk about research, let's dive deeper into what we do, what we use as research methods. So we do both user interviews and surveys and workshops and any sort of method that you can think of. But what we're going to focus on today is user interviews. So since you talked about survey, we're going to move to the interviews. To understand how this hack that I'm going to show today is really useful, you probably need to have a little bit of an understanding of how we used to do things before we knew this hack. It's a fairly recent discovery for me, so that's how we used to do things. So we used to create a script for each interview that we would do, and we would basically copy and paste that script into multiple Google Docs. And each Google Doc would have the name of the participant, and that would mean that you end up with something like this, with generally many more tabs. And once you have something like this, it's really hard to skim through content and really understand what are the themes that we're seeing, what are the patterns. Because it's just a very big document and you have many of them. You don't really know where they live. I mean, the designers do, but the project managers probably don't know our design folder structure. And it's also quite difficult to understand what was part of the script and what are the notes that people took on this document. So I thought there has to be a better way of synthesizing research. And as anyone would probably do, I just Googled it. So I Googled user research synthesis. And this is what I found. And it's an article by David Gant, product designer at Pivotal Labs. And he wrote about using Trello for user research synthesis. And I found it really, really interesting. We use Trello for a lot of things in the company, and we organize our design projects with Trello. So I thought I'd give it a try and try to adapt it to the way we do research. But before going into what the actual hack is, who of you is familiar with what Trello is? Oh, wow, okay. So the vast majority of you knows how Trello works, so I'm not gonna spend too much time on describing that. Cool. So since I thought of preparing this presentation in a different way, but then let's go into demo time, because it's just easier. I'm just gonna show you some videos of actually me taking notes and showing you how to do it. So before we even go there, you're gonna have to create a board. So you create a board and you give it the name of the research project that you're doing. And after you've created a board, you can get to this step. So this step is creating a column, a pretty empty column with just one card, and we're gonna call it interviews. And what you want to add to that card is a little image with just interviews and an arrow, and you can create that of any size, with any software that you like, even with Paint, and you can just drop it in there, and Trello will do the work of using the preview. So this might seem like, okay, what do I do with this divider here? You're gonna figure that out later, so trust me on this. Adding a user column, so this is gonna be the next step. So every column in this board will represent one of your users. And if you want to make the work really easy for people that collaborate with you, so your PMs or people that take notes with you during the research, you want to name them with their first name and last name, and have the date and time of the interview, so that when you get back to this, you really know who that person was. The next step you want to do always to facilitate people that are taking notes with you is to create a card with the user information. So most likely, if you're interviewing this person, you already know something about them. And we encourage you to write everything you have in there. So not just their name, but also, are they a new user? Are they a recurring user? If you have any results from the screener that you sent out, you can link to them there. Or if you have an admin link or some sort of database link, you can put it there so that everyone can look at that before the interview and come to the interview prepared. And then you get to the fun part, which is taking notes. So Trello has this really cool feature where you just type stuff in the card and you hit enter, and it takes you straight to the next card in edit mode. So it really looks like a free flow of your thoughts or the user's thoughts. And one suggestion that I usually make here is create one card for each concept or pain point that the user is giving you. The more you do interviews, the more you figure out how much you want to write in a card. They can be very long, they can be pretty short. Everyone has their own style for that. Once you've done that, you have your list with all the things that your user said. And to make it really recognizable for the second part, so when you're going to do synthesis, you want to assign labels to all of the cards. So this could take a little bit of work, but there are many shortcuts you can use to do this. So just go on the Trello support article about key shortcuts, and you're going to find that it's pretty easy to do. So you end up finishing your research, you've interviewed all your users, so you have a bunch of columns, and what do you do with them? Now you have to go through your cards and read them, but chances are that after you've run all these interviews, you pretty much know already some of the patterns and some of the themes. So you want to start writing those down, and before doing that, you want to create a divider. So that's where the interviews with the arrow and patterns here with the arrow really come into place. They give you a nice split of what were interviews and what are going to be the patterns. As I mentioned, you probably already know like one or two patterns, so you just go ahead and create a column. So this time, instead of creating a column for a user, it's going to be a column for a pattern that you've identified. And what do you do there? You simply drag the card that expressed that thought from that user into that column. So some people here duplicate the cards, some people just drag the cards. I like to drag them so that I have this goal of like inbox 0 kind of thing, where I want to drag all the things into patterns. But yeah, everyone has their own style, so you can like duplicate it. But one question that might come to you now is, this is a very small board. It's just two users, just one pattern. And what does it look like when you really have like 10 users and 25 patterns? So that's actually what happened to us when we first tried this method. And here's an overlook of what the actual board looked like. And there's a lot more columns following this one. But this is to give you an idea of why this is so useful. Because in one page, you have a very visual, and we're designers, so at least for me, I need a visual cue, a visual representation of what's going on. And in this way, you can see very long columns. They might be a hint that it's a big pain point, but the way you know it's a real pain point is you look at how many colors are in that column. So if you see so many colors in that column, you already know that a lot of users really face that problem. On the other side, if you see cards that are very long or many cards from the same color, you can just understand that that user was very vocal. So that might influence the length of the column, so you just take it a little less into account. So I'm already diving a little deep into the benefits, and what I mentioned is one of them. But the other thing is that you are going to have basically just a lot of quotes under the pain points, under the columns, and that's going to make it really easy to sell your problem to the right stakeholders. So you're not going to have to open the doc and dive into the actual quotes for that problem. I don't remember if they said it at the start of the interview or at the end. You just have everything cataloged. And one other big advantage is you remember the tabs and the docs. It was really hard to go through one by one and identify themes. But with this one, you really have an easy way to synthesize research. So if you need to create a presentation after this, you already have everything in one page, and you have you remember this person said that, and they had the green color. And lastly, it's very easy. So you can really teach this to anyone in your company, and we're usually short on note takers, so this really takes away that excuse. It's really super easy, so you can just grab anyone to take notes with you during the interview. So this would be my main benefits, and with this, I wanted to wish you better research.